Welcome back to Edge of Intelligence, where we explore how strategy, systems, and smart technology converge to solve hard, real world problems. I'm Carl Owen, a fractional CIO and AI advisor with Protelligent. Today, we're delving into something deeper than data and automation. We're discussing mission, leadership, and transformation at the human level. My guest is Jimmy May, a retired U.S. Navy SEAL commander and founder of Beyond the Brotherhood, a nonprofit organization that helps SEALs transition from the intensity of military service to a new purpose and impact in civilian life. Jimmy spent over 2 decades leading elite teams in the world's most demanding environments. Today, he's leading a different kind of mission, guiding others through transition, identity shifts, and new beginnings. We'll talk about leadership under pressure, the human side of transformation, and how mission first thinking applies to business technology and even AI adoption. Jimmy, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I have to say, I wasn't, my name probably wasn't the top of the Rolodex talking about AI, but it kind of makes sense now.
Jimmy, after 22 years in the SEAL teams, what was the spark that led you to create Beyond the Brotherhood?
So, within 4 months of my retirement, four of my friends died by their own hand. And I wasn't planning on starting a 501c3. I couldn't even spell 501c3 back then. But you know what? I knew something had to be done. Two of those guys were really close with me. Bobby Ramirez was a really good friend of mine. We hung out all weekend. He killed himself on Monday. And then Mike Day was another friend of mine, was shot 28 times in Iraq, survived, killed the three guys that shot him, came home, survived for 9 more years, and then finished the job himself. And I was like, you know what? Something has to be done. And so I started Beyond the Brotherhood in conjunction with my for-profit business, Mayday Executive Services. And there's some overlap there, but it's been a very purposeful journey for me.
Well, most of our audience works in environments where failure isn't fatal, it's just inconvenient. For you, the stakes were life and death. How does that shape how you think about leadership and decision making under pressure?
I work with a lot of businesses now with my for-profit business, and it's actually the same kind of decision matrix. It's just that the stakes are higher, and so it makes it more pronounced. But it's the same kind of decisions. It's the same kind of people decisions, the same kind of decisions about the choices you make and why you make them. We weigh risk, right? Risk to mission versus risk to force. That's everything we do in the SEAL teams. Guess what? It's the exact same thing in the business worlds. Once I learned that, it hasn't been that hard of a transition for me.
In tech and transformation, leaders face uncertainty and ambiguity every day. There's either new systems, new risk, unknown outcomes. How do you train teams to operate effectively when clarity is limited?
So number one, risk equals opportunity. Risk is not something we avoid. Risk is something that we mitigate, we plan for, and then we thrive in it. And I think that's why we've been so successful transitioning these SEALs into the business world, because your big time entrepreneurs understand that risk is opportunity. So every time something changes and something is new, if you can figure out how it works instead of being afraid of it and trying to avoid it, then you can thrive in it. The SEAL teams is at the cutting edge of a lot of that stuff, and it's not because of what they tell us to do down the chain. It's because of those young guys who are getting a hold of new stuff and leaders letting us work. And the next thing you know, the guy's got a new way to push the mission forward.
Well, what parallels do you see between leading a SEAL team into the unknown and leading an organization through digital transformation or AI integration?
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning, and one of the things that popped up was that towards the end of my career, we did the big fight in Mosul. So Mosul was an interesting time. ISIS owned the battlefield, and so for me, it was actually nice because you knew where the bad guys were, and they identified themselves instead of trying to hide all the time. So, one of the things we came up with, because we've been in Iraq now for 17 years, the Iraqis know how to kick a door. The Iraqis know how to do this stuff, but what they can't do is they can't integrate combined arms. They can't talk with American jets or British jets or whoever's flying over and then drop the bombs where they need to be safely. And so what we ended up doing was stepping back, letting the Iraqis do the door kicking. But then when they get bogged down, we would call in the airstrikes. And it was a new kind of thing we called A2E, advise and assist. There was also A3E, which is what the young guys wanted, advise, assist, and company. Now, that means you go with. But the thing was, we really didn't need the guys on the ground because the Iraqis could handle it once we called in the airstrikes for them. So what that made me think about was like, what we have to overcome to integrate that, because the new guys hated A2E. They even hated it. They're like, because they wanted to come in and they saw those of us that had a career kicking doors and doing, they wanted to prove themselves and they lost that opportunity. So that the inertia to overcome was the young guys and trying to keep them back, which is what you want. You want guys that want to fight, but we had to pull them back. But I thought about it, the next level of integration, when we start getting AI and we start getting robots and stuff, I'm not going to belittle the Iraqi contribution and compare them to non-life form beings. But I will say we could just put robots out there And now we just stand back and do all the sensors we had. We had drones, we had enduring drones, long life things. We could watch what's going on. The Iraqis would report back to us, and then we could just drop those bombs. So honestly, if we have, some kind of robot with the right array of sensors, there's really no reason for us to do a lot of these things. And then what I thought about next was, okay, well, at what point do we take that decision out of people and then we let machines decide to kill people? That's a hard question because that's a slippery slope. I mean, it's probably going to happen in some point, but that's something that I think we need to be real careful about. Like we need to own that decision to take a life, before we automate that.
Yeah. In your experiences, how do you balance discipline and adaptability? Staying mission focused while pivoting fast when everything's changing rapidly around you.
Well, one of the things in the SEAL teams we don't have is doctrine. And, the Marine Corps has doctrine, Army has doctrine. We really don't. We can kind of borrow from whatever we want. And I think that having that really loose set of rules lends itself to a lot of creativity, especially since we're operating across a wide variety of platforms. So, like, people are in charge. Like, if we're talking to, like, the Secretary of Defense or something, they view the SEAL teams as a very platform centric force, which means we can come in under the water, we can come in over the water, we can come in from the air, from the land. There's a lot of things, but it's all about the platforms. And so I think that in the future, that unconventional approach is going to be the way war is waged. And I don't know how much people will be involved, at least with the very beginning. I'm not sure.
I think a lot of the leadership training aspects of the SEAL experience is directly relatable to some of the business leaders and what they're
It
looking
is.
for out there. So, what are
Yeah.
some of those leadership principles from your SEAL experience that business leaders often overlook?
Well, one of the most popular topics I teach on is cultivating organizational resilience. And that's how do you teach resilience to your whole organization, not just on an individual level. And, it boils down to me, and I have different aspects from my career and vignettes I talk about. And we talk about building community purpose and goals, right? That's how we build resilience. And one of the things we did in BUDS, which is SEAL Selection and Training, was we started, while I was there, we had a student who quit Hell Week, which is not uncommon. Like 80 something percent of people quit. So it's not that big of a deal for us to lose people. And so when he quit, we usually give him a man talk and we put him to bed because he'd been awake for a few days. This kid jumped in his car, drove down to downtown San Diego and jumped off the 24th floor of the Marriott. We started looking at the records and we've got some other deaths that don't really add up. And we're like, okay, we might have a problem with this suicide. And so we started this. The boss had to deal with the family and the congressional delegation, all the investigations. He's like, hey, Jimmy, I want you to figure out how we move forward and what we can do to mitigate this. And so, in the teams, a lot of your officers are all Ivy League guys, they're super smart guys. And I had a couple MIT guys, and I'm like, okay, nerds, you guys got to figure out what we do, and let's use your brain instead of mine. And these guys came up with this idea called the HROC, the Hell Week Recovery Observation Center. And in that HROC, after you quit Hell Week, you go to this big room that's like, it's a big room and it's dark, but it's warm and there's TVs and there's pizza and you have to spend 24 hours there. And before you leave there, you have to talk to the psych, you have to talk to the chaplain, and you have to call home. You have to call somebody that matters to you and tell them that you didn't make it. And when they told me this, I looked at him and I was like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. This is going to be one big mass suicide. But I was wrong. And the reason I was wrong is because the biggest thing was community. So these guys come in because before they go lay in their room by themselves while they're just sitting there stewing for the next 3 or 4 days while my staff is busy finishing up Hell Week. And now they are in a room full of their buddies. And you know what? They're not the weirdos. They look around and 80% of the class is in there. The weirdos are the guys running around out there with the boats on their heads, still freezing and shivering after 3 or 4 days, right? Calling home. That's a big one. All of our guys are the prom king, the captain of the football team. They're all the biggest badass their family, their community's ever known. And they haven't failed. The straight up facts are you're all about to fail, just about all of you. I tell really good guys who come in program, I mentor these young guys and their dads will call me and I'm like, hey man, he's probably not going to make it, just so you know. I don't care how awesome he is. That's just the numbers. But all of a sudden, that first failure they're having and they're not ready to deal with it. Well, guess what?
It's like the
All
first
those
failure in
guys
their
in that
life.
community, they're all doing the same thing. They're all having that first failure. I was nervous about that because I'm like, we're not really coaching up their families. But if it were to go wrong, because I think most of the time the phone call goes like, hey, I love you, son. Good try. We still love you. Let's just say it went wrong, though. Where are they? Right back in full of all their guys that just quit going through this hard time. They're all in it together. And I think that was a really important aspect of it. And so that community is one of the biggest things I teach. And then the purpose, we start working on a new job for those guys and the goals. And then there's one other little aspect about that, which is timing, because people are like, this is great, let's run the HROC all the time. And when I'm talking to businesses, it's like, why don't we do the HROC all the time? Because people quit all throughout the program, but we only do it during Hell Week. And the reason why is because we have better things to do than sit around hugging quitters all the time. I don't have the staff for it. I'm not staffed. I'm not manned. I don't, but I can put my shots where they count. And the way this translates to business is that, hey, if you're an accountant, April 15th, that ain't a great day for you. If you run a church, Christmas, Easter ain't so merry. You're busy, right? So we talk about stacking your assets around the times when because I don't know when someone's personal resilience is low, but I do know when I'm going to put the screws to them. And so I can stack my assets around those things. It's the responsible thing to do, and your people will appreciate you for it. So that's kind of the takeaways from that vignette when I teach businesses.
Well, thank you for that. So a lot of times for me, I get dropped into, when I go to a client site, I get dropped in the middle of a problem, right?
Of course,
So
or else you wouldn't be there.
yeah, exactly. So if you were dropped into a company mid-transition, what's the first thing you'd assess? Is it the plan, the people, the mission clarity?
Leadership is the first thing. It's the first thing. It all starts there. If there's a problem, it starts with leadership, and that's what we're brought in to talk about. Usually it's a communication breakdown where the leaders don't understand what the people underneath them need, or the people underneath them don't understand what the leaders need. And so, breaking down those communication barriers is some of the first and most important things we normally need to do. You just asked me a broad question. That's a broad answer, but that's normally what we got to do.
But I tell my clients that strategy is useless without a clarity and mission, right? So I imagine you learn that the hard way. How does a clear mission change how teams perform?
Okay, so what we do in the team is we build a mission statement because I don't want to control my guys. My guys need to understand deeply what's going on. I love the Marine Corps. I love Marines. They are some of the best people on the planet. I love them. They are not allowed to get outside of their little box. In the SEAL teams, it's a lot different. Those guys, I need them to understand what the overarching mission is, and they're cleared hot to do whatever it is they want, as long as they tell me what they're doing and they operate within the SOPs, the standard operating procedures. And standard operating procedures, when you're new to the game, you kind of feel like, it's restricting me. Why do I got to do that all the time? No, it's important. You need to do it that way so that we all know how you're going to move. I know when you're moving building, you're going to do it one of three ways, depending on the threat level. I know. You don't tell me that. Before you leave to move to another building in pursuit of that bad guy or whatever you're doing, you need to check in with me. Why? Because I got a stack of aircraft up there that's going to shoot you if you're not where I think you are. And so the guys all understand that. And the way I communicate what the big picture of the guys is through what I call commander's intent. This is not a Jimmy May original. This is the military, how you do it. But a lot of people don't really appreciate it or learn it the way they should. The commander's intent is built just a couple pieces. Number one, the mission statement. Why are we doing this? And for us, it's usually a capture, a kill, or rescue, one of those things. Next up comes specified tasks. These are things you must do to make this a mission success. So it depends on what kind of environment you're in, but in general, we're not allowed to kill non-combatants. Because if you do that, you just make it worse for the whole situation, right? And besides, with us, if you can just kill everybody, send somebody else in, because we're kind of a sharper edge than a lot of the forces out there. Implied tasks. These are things that you should try to do. It's not going to be complete mission failure if you don't do it, but hey, you need to get these done. And then at the end, this is the most important part, is desired end state. That's a picture of what the finished outcome looks like. And so when the guys understand all that, because we go through contingency after contingency, everything we can think of, but something's going to happen that we didn't think of. And now the guys can sit and they can look at it like, okay, we know what this mission is. We didn't plan for this. We're going to do this. And the end of it, our after action report, when we sit down, we go back over everything. And, if they can explain why they did things through the lens of commander's intent and the rules of engagement, because we don't do things that are immoral or illegal, then they're fine.
One of the most powerful things to me about Beyond the Brotherhood is that it deals with identity. So who you are when the mission changes, right?
Yeah.
That's something we see in business all the time. Organizations are clinging to legacy ways of working. We've always done it this way, right?
Yeah.
What have you learned
That's a great excuse.
yeah.
Yeah.
What have you learned about human transition? What makes it so difficult?
Well, I think with our population in general, speaking about the SEAL teams, we have 18 to 20 to 28, but really it's 18 to 24-year-old young men. And that identity piece that you talked about is really powerful, because if you see this big jacked up truck driving down the road and it's got Tough Nuts Mutter written across the top and all this cool stuff bolted on it, and you had to guess the age and gender of that person driving it, it's an 18 to 24-year-old young man. Now, why that matters is because they're searching for identity at that time in our lives. We were, Carl, you were too. And they're clinging to this identity. Well, these guys who've been training to be a SEAL for 3, 4, 5 years, some of them longer, they've told everybody in their hometown, everyone knows they're going to be a SEAL. And all of a sudden, that is shattered. So, understanding that identity is part of who they are, and then not ignoring it. You don't want to be like, well, this is not for you. No, you know what? You're still a great American. You're still a heroic young man. And there's a lot of opportunity for a guy like you. It's just not this community right now. Perhaps you can come back in a few years. It takes about 2 years to get back. If you're an enlisted guy, an officer, you never get another chance. But, perhaps you can come back. But either way, you've stepped up to the plate in a way that most people never will. And so we try to deal with that identity, because that's a hard thing for a young man. Their frontal lobe ain't even all the way done yet. I think mine's still developing, and I'm 48.
Well, when you work with these guys and they're stepping into these new roles, what patterns do you see in how they rebuild purpose and confidence?
Well, initially they're just kind of reeling, they're not sure. And so what we need to do is get them on a path. And that starts off with connecting with them on a level that's, hey, you're not a bad American. You're not a turd. You're actually a really amazing person. And this doesn't diminish anything you've ever done. So we need to connect with them there. Then after we connect with them, we start getting them thinking about the next steps, because there's nothing worse than sitting there dwelling on this last thing that sucked. And is it going to be painful for a while? Yeah, it is. It is going to be painful, especially when your best friend that you went there with made it, or you know what I mean? But that being said, your life isn't over. You're 20 years old, man. You got another 60 years to go, and a lot of amazing things that you can do. The MCPON, which is the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. So the guy that hangs out with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and is like the top guy, at one point was a Buds quitter. And I remember he came to Buds when I was the executive officer there, and he's like, hey, I just want to tell you this. I didn't make it. I tried and I quit. And I was like, you should tell people that. He goes, no, I don't want to tell them. I'm like, that is so powerful for you being the top dude, rose to the top, and having that setback early in your life. I'm like, it's not my story to tell for you, so I'm not going to say what his name was. But man, what a powerful thing he could have, really connected with a lot of people, and probably helped a lot of people with that story.
Well, and that kind of gets me to my next thought or next question. How do you help someone kind of rediscover that meaning when their old definitions of success no longer applies?
So we deal with this pretty regularly in Beyond the Brotherhood. I'm going to shift gears from Buds to Beyond the Brotherhood, which is we screen and select Navy SEALs of character for the next mission in life. And, those guys, a lot of times they get out and they are like, I'm going to be executive protection. I'm like, bro, you're getting out of the teams because you don't want to be on the end of a whip of the government gone 300 days a year. Executive protection isn't going to be any better, except the rules of engagement suck for you. I was like, so usually what I have to do is we start with a personality assessment. And in that personality assessment, it's not just a bunch of things you fill out. You fill it out, then you sit down with a dude that wrote it one-on-one, Jay Harrison, who only does pro athletes and Navy SEALs. And he sits down and goes over it with kind of open their aperture to kind of break that paradigm of like, hey, I'm a man with a gun. I'm a thug for America. It's like, no, you're not. You're a pretty gifted dude. You got a master's degree and you can do a lot more than carry a gun. And so, opening someone's aperture, you can't just tell them. They have to find it in their own. But when we go through that personality assessment, that's the first thing we do when you come into Beyond the Brotherhood and you're accepted as a fellow, is open that aperture in whatever way that is. So we use a personality assessment to kind of give people a taste of something different. And then we plug them into different companies where they can intern, and we cover their pay in some cases, and just kind of open their eyes to new things. But you can't tell them. I mean, SEALs are hard-headed guys. So you can't tell them, you got to show them. And that's the same way in businesses too. If you're trying to break a paradigm that's an old way, in the SEAL teams, one of the hardest things, I was brand new as in 2001, and they got this new thing called night vision. And they were like, hey, you got to use night vision. And I remember all the older guys hated it. They're like, I don't want to do night vision. Like, they grew up doing pop flares. They shoot that big flare up and then everyone can see, and then you slug it out with the bad guy. Well, we had a really forward-thinking commander named Szymanski. Love the guy, big time fighter, dude I looked up to back then. And he's like, hey, guess what? Here at SEAL Team 2 from, what do you say, dusk until dawn, nods are on. And it pissed a lot of people off. And then on our first training mission, we killed somebody. One of our guys got shot in the back of the head in training. And everyone was like, see, I told you it's too dangerous. But once you understand how to use it, because you have to learn to fast rope, you have to learn to drive, you have to learn to skydive, you have to do everything through these green tubes. And once you learn to do it, it's such an amazing advantage. I mean, no one even fights with us at night. At least in my like we would walk around all we want at night as long as we don't step on an IED, a landmine. But during the day, I mean, they'll come out and they'll slug it out with you. But at night, no way.
Wow. Well, there's so much change right now with AI and everything. You blink your eyes and it's going to be different tomorrow. So, there are all these new applications and people will come up to you that I've got to do this, I've got to do that, right? Whether they have a problem to solve or not. So CEOs are struggling now to lead through this massive change. So if you're advising a CEO leading a company through this change, and it could be automation, it could be layoffs, because that happens quite a bit now, obviously,
Gonna happen.
mergers. Are there lessons from the SEAL transition process that are applicable for that CEO, or how would you advise a CEO that's kind of leading through?
Well, I think I would get right back to what I said a minute ago, which is change makes risk, and risk is opportunity. And you just have to be not afraid of that because all of us want to cling to what made us good. If you were the best, I don't know, let's just say you were the best like boxer, right? And then there's this new way of boxing that comes out that's just it's just so much better, but you're the old way. You don't want to learn the new way. In the teams, I saw this all the time. Guys didn't want to change. We had close quarters combat. So that's how we take down houses. It's actually choreographed. I mean, it's a lot of rules and it's super fast. We use it as a selection tool. So we come in and like if I go left, the guy behind me is going right, the next guy's going to go left, next one right. If we see a threat, we cross, maybe we need to cross pan. Then we like nod off. That means something to everybody different. Depending where you are in the train, you go in the next room and now you're number 3. All of a sudden, everything's different, but the rules are the same. And you're shooting next to each other. You're getting shot back at. It's a really high stakes thing. And we use it as a selection process. We built everything around this. Well, we get to Ramadi and I'm in there I was in Jocko's crew and we're clearing this hospital. And I remember I was like, why are we running in there? It's a corner fed room because I've been shot already by this time. And I'm kind of like, don't want to get shot again. And so I kind of like would clear from the door. And then all I got to do is I could see the whole room. And if there's no furniture in it, then it's pretty easy. And so I started clearing from the door. And I remember we came back and they had this new thing they invented called combat clearance, where you clear from the door. And I was like, I think I invented that. I just didn't want to run in the room. But it was fought because it was like, oh, it's cowardly. That's not how we do things. But it actually was a much better way to do it. And the problem was the weight of the ceiling was holding up the foundation, if that makes sense. We built all these processes around selection and stuff around this old way, but the new way was the right way. Now, the old way is still appropriate for hostage rescue because we have to get to that person before they kill him. So that sucks. I mean, when they send us in to get this person, they have already said that guy's life is more important than ours. And so that's how we tell the guys, like, hey, listen, yeah, we're going to run in old school style, but that's the decision that was made above us, and that's what we signed up to do. Breaking that paradigm can be difficult, and for us, we had to set up mock-ups where guys would do it the old way, and they do it the new way. And the old way, you're all covered in paint. You're like, dang, I got lit up in there. Then you do it the new way, and it's like, oh, makes more sense. So you got to show people. You can't tell them.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about community again, because I think that's something that's really important that you hit on earlier. So how important is it for people to have, I'll call it a tribe, during times of change like all this?
Man, it really is. It's probably the most important part because you think about our superpower as humans. It's not that we're smarter. It's not that we're not faster. We're not stronger, but we have this community. I mean, like this computer you're on, I know how to turn it on, but I mean, thousands of people and ideas and thoughts came into making this. And that collaboration of community is really, it's not just our superpower. It's something we need. We need that. It's a psychological thing we have to have. And so when you feel like you've lost your community, it's a really painful thing. And they talk about veterans leaving the armed forces. I'm sure it is in the SEAL teams. You've been with these guys 300 days a year. I mean, you're closer to them than you are your wife and your kids. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And when you get ripped out of that, it does cause an identity crisis. And so that's that community that you build is one of the most important things. And that culture you build in that community, because people are like, well, I'm working on strategy. I'm like, well, listen, culture is going to develop whether you mess with it or not. So you might as well do your best to shape it in some kind of like really healthy direction. And for me, what I liked I liked a really flat culture, which means I didn't like a hierarchy. I like, if there's no one that outranks me around, my guys call me Jimmy. They always have, always will. In front, when the bosses come in, we got to look like we're military, and so we do it a little bit differently. But one of the ways I cultivated that was we had a big fight club culture. I was pretty good at jujitsu, decent at boxing, and decent at Muay Thai. It doesn't even matter if I'm the best. If there's a better guy, we'll let him teach. But we've spent a lot of time on the mat, and guess what? We fight as equals. It doesn't matter what I got on my collar. You punch me in the face, and all of a sudden we're completely equal. And so I did a lot of fight club with my guys. We normally fought 3 to 5 days a week on deployment, maybe more. But it was a really cool way for guys. They have placement and access to me. This guy, they just punch me in the face. They're going to feel a little bit more comfortable talking to me about things. And if you're not the best, that's even better. If you have somebody else that allows you to be humble and let that other person come in. AJ James comes to mind. The guy was for pro Muay Thai fighter, and he would come to my jiu-jitsu classes. But if he showed up and we're doing striking, I always had him teach, and he did a great job.
Well, you've lived through identity reinvention personally. How did you navigate your own transition from service to civilian life?
The most important aspect of my transition was mentorship, and that person that did that is named Steve Gattina, who's the CEO of Pray.com. I did a job for him before I was walking in Home Depot, and some guy's like, "Hey, you Jimmy May?" I'm like, "Maybe. What's up?" And they're like, "Hey, we heard you teach stuff in the teams." I still teach combat leadership in the teams. Like, could you come teach our business? And I'm like, "No, I don't do that." He goes, "Mark Hawes said you might." Mark Hawes was one of my main jujitsu buddies. I was like, "Mark said I'd do it? Okay, I'll probably do it." So I went in there, I spoke, and it went really well. It was just leadership principles. And then afterwards, like, "Hey, we got to pay you." I'm like, "You can't pay me. Like, I'm not allowed to do this. Like, this is just something I did for my friend Mark." They're like, "Well, what can we do?" I was like, "You know what? I'm getting out in a few years. I need a mentor. Would you do that?" And I tell you what, that was the single best investment of my entire life. I talked to that dude every day, text messages, phone calls. I was at his house this weekend. He's been in my house. He's just, if you're making a transition and you're not sure, you need to find a mentor. That's the most important. Like, the best mentor is, a little bit senior to you and not in your chain of command, which means he can't be in your company because he's got other forces on him pulling on him. He ain't going to be able to be real with you. But outside of your chain of command, they can look at your situation with an unjaded eye. And so, if we're talking to anybody out there, the very best thing you can do when you're going through a hard time, and you can't find a mentor when you're going through a hard time, you need to have them preloaded. Like, they already know you, they know what's going on. So you need to build and cultivate this group of mentors. 3 to 5 of them is optimal. And they're going to change over time. For me in the military, I had a group of military mentors. On the outside, it's been pretty much Steve, but I've got a couple other guys who've helped me a lot. But, that mentorship, don't discount that. Take that by the horns, walk out there and find a mentor and just be straight up. It's kind of awkward if you're, like asking to do it on a date. You're like, "Hey, bro, you be my mentor?" Like, "Oh, yeah, what's that mean?" I'm like, "It means when I'm confused or scared, you got to call me right away and return my text immediately." And if they're worth it, which they probably are because you picked them, they'll roger up. And then how do you pay that back? Well, you don't. You pay it forward, which means the next time some little dude comes up to you and is like, "Hey, man, will you be my mentor?" You need to step up to the plate because that's how things get done.
That's great advice. Sometimes leaders forget that behind every project or system rollout, that there are people, real people whose roles, identity, and sense of contribution are changing as you do that. How do you help people reconnect with mission when the mission itself is evolving?
Well, first of all, you have to understand the mission well before you can communicate it. So when it starts to evolve, you need to sit down and take some quiet time and make sure you understand what that mission is. Then, to repeat something we said, because none of this is new, when you sit down and you make a mission statement, you write that mission statement so that it's as succinct as it can be and captures all the things you need. And like we said, it's mission, specified task, implied task, desired end state. What does that desired end state look like? What does it look like to have mission accomplished? Now, once you know that, you can go communicate it. And the way you do that, I think always in person is the very best. An email is not, just, you might as well not even do it. And then showing them. So in person and showing, if it matters, you need to do it that way.
You've led in situations where uncertainty is constant and the cost of hesitation can get you killed. How do you build trust and cohesion in that kind of an environment?
Well, building trust starts with shared intense experiences. That's what I do for Mayday. It doesn't have to have anything to do with your job. It just has to do with understanding that that person is going to put your needs and the mission ahead of their own needs. So in the teams, we have this thing that goes mission, team, self, in that order every time. And so Are the things I'm doing going to affect the mission the right way? Check. Is what I'm doing going to help the team? Check. And then there's a long nothing. And now we worry about our own comfort and our own needs. That's a hard thing to get to, but there's a way to get there. You have to model that for your team. And ways to do that, it doesn't have to be, it can be a lot of fun. I do these events for guys all the time. I took some guys spearfishing 2 weeks ago, and half of them had never been in the water. And now we're in the big blue, 30 miles out, and I'm shooting, 100-pound tuna, bluefin tuna swimming by at 40 miles an hour. And then to get that big pissed off bloody fish in there, there's sea lions that are trying to get that fish, there's sharks, and we're all in there working. One of us is trying to get the crazy wildlife off them. The other ones are trying to finish killing the fish. The other guys are pulling it up. And, you see guys really come out of their shell and work for the team. And that's one way to do it. And that's what people hire me to do all the time.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit more. So, what are some of the essential ingredients of trust on high performing teams, whether that's a SEAL platoon or a business unit rolling out a new AI project?
Essential elements of trust. Well, I think communication, consistency. If you do something out of character, then people should be like, I think my son the other day, we were driving back and I said a word and he thought it was a cuss word. He goes, "Oh, did you just cuss, Dad?" I'm like, "No, I said this." He goes, "Oh, okay. I thought you said, the S word." I'm like, "No, I don't really cuss." And so when people see you do something out of character, it's a signal for them. But you need to have that consistency. You need to have, your character, you can't hide it forever. I have to say my character has not always been as what I would want it to be. But I continue to work to try and get those, to get my life aligned, so that I have that character that my kids can look up to. But in my youth, I don't think I was there. I'm trying to get there now.
How do you coach a leader who struggles with control? Someone who wants certainty before they take action. I've had a number of leaders in the past who have to have everything, all the facts laid out before they make a decision. And sometimes that's not possible.
Yeah, it used to drive me crazy. One of my mentors in the teams, he runs SOCOM now. His name is Mitch Bradley. He's a 4-star SEAL, the highest ranking SEAL. He was my retiring officer. Brilliant. Physicist, just brilliant guy. And I remember the commander before him, I was running drone strikes out of a country. We'll just keep it kind of big. And, I've got this road blocked out because I had to minimize collateral damage, CDE, collateral damage. So I've got where I can strike them. I have a 30-second time of flight for this weapon. And so I know, because this thing's super high, I'm all lining everything up and I'm getting ready to do it. And I remember, my old commander would be like, "Good, you get a shot, kill him, done, I'm on it." Well, then I'm working for Mitch. Mitch is like, I'm like, "Hey, I got everything lined up, let's do this." He goes, "How much time do I have to make this decision?" I'm like, "You have 23 more seconds, come on. And he's like, "When's the next time that I have this?" And I'm like, "Well, if he goes with normal pattern of life, I think we'll have another shot in about 10 minutes. He's like, "What's the percentage that you?" I'm sitting here like, "Yeah, 5 seconds," And then I'd be like, "Okay, we'll take the next one." And it was really frustrating to me. But you know what? When you're taking a life, it's a big decision, and especially in a nation we're not technically at war with. You know what I mean? It's like that's an act of war. Not that their nation wasn't on board with it, but there's a lot that could go wrong there. So you just have to understand your leader, and then what I learned to do was I learned to front load him with all that information. So I'd be like, "Hey, this is what I think the route's going to be. Here's the road where I have it painted green where we can drop with the right amount. Here's your decision space. When he enters here, you have 10 seconds to make the call. Then we have 5 minutes to our next decision space. And then if he goes where I think he's going to go, then you have, and so you have to learn to adapt to your leader's style. So if you've got a leader who is going to be more apprehensive, and that's not a bad thing, that's not a bad thing. It's you. So I was not a decision maker. I was a decision facilitator. And I need to facilitate his decisions in the way that fits his style. That's my job. It ain't his job to flex to me. It's my job to flex to him. And so as someone who understands that, and he also went to Fight Club all the time too. So I got to know him on a more primal level. But as someone who understands that, you need to communicate to your superiors in a way that they can understand, and your superiors need to be humble enough to receive it. And humility is one of the hardest things to cultivate, but it can be cultivated.
What role does preparation and training or mindset play into outcome when outcomes are unknown?
Okay, preparation is my whoopee. I love preparation. I do risky things every single week with people. We jump out of planes, we swim with sharks, we blow stuff up every single step of the way. But you know what? I tell people it's the illusion of danger because I've got so many layers of protection. We did a big job in Texas back in July and we had to blow something up. And I'm like, hey, we're going to catch your ranch on fire. Like, there's no way we're not. He's like, what do we do? I'm like, okay, first, I need you to mow it down as short as you can. Then I'm going to get a fire truck out here and the fire marshal. And because it's going to, and where I want to do it is on this levee. So that way, if it burns, it just burns to the lake. And I layered everything because I saw what we needed to do. He still wanted to do it. I layered all these layers. And then when we blew up, and it did catch fire. So what happened? All of my guests ran up there with water bottles trying to put the fire out. And now I can't bring the fire truck in until I get them out of the way. So, now when I know something like that, I put police tape up. So I'm like, hey, I need you to stay back here. Even if it catches fire and you think your little water bottle can help it, I have a fire truck back here and a fire tractor and the chief of the fire department who can do this a lot better than you can. So, I hope that answered your question. I rambled.
Well, and that kind of feeds directly into my next question. So, in moments of chaos or incomplete information, how do you make confident decisions quickly?
Okay. Sometimes an okay decision executed with the right timing is a lot better than a perfect decision executed late. And so you need to think about that calculus before you go into the op. Am I going to have time to really stop and think about that? And that's what I learned from Mitch was, hey, let's preload all of these decisions as best I can, get it set up. So at least you understand what your decision space is. For me, a lot of guys have been shot around me on my calls. It sucks. It's a heavy thing to bear, and sometimes I made the wrong call. And that's actually in the SEAL teams when they asked me to start teaching combat leadership in 2011. I said no, and they were like, "Well, we want you to." I'm like, "No," and they're just like, "Hey, they're orders, not requests. Just do it once." So I decided to torpedo myself by talking about nothing but things I screwed up, so they won't ask me to do it again. And I didn't want to do it because I was embarrassed of some of the calls I made. Guys got hurt on my watch. The guys are in the class that were on the op. They know. And so it made me sick to talk about it. I hated doing it. On the backside, they call me up to their office and I'm like, well, they're just going to yell at me because I threw this whole thing. And they were like, hey, you did a really good job. They want to keep doing it. I'm like, what? They're like, no, it was a really well received class. It's 2025 now. I still do it. I've been teaching it for years and years. And you know what? I was surprised at how forgiving the guys were at the calls I made. I was honest about it. I told them what I thought happened. And sometimes the guys would be in the class that were on the op and they would be like, hey, you tell them a story. And their story might be different than mine. And I'm like, wait up, you ain't lying. I ain't lying. What's going on? But the perspectives are different because I've got, the command and control net in one ear. I got a stack of aircraft in this ear and I'm plugging into headquarters when I need more assets. The dude might be on the assault force with assault net in this ear and he's just living in that moment, kicking the door. So we have a much different experience. But, uh, when they made me do that, it was really good for me. I think personally, I didn't want to do it, but I think having the guys accept me for the calls I made and the mistakes I made, uh, and getting to kind of tell my side of the story was cathartic and healthy. And I don't feel like I struggle with a lot of the PTSD issues that a lot of guys do that have, you know, I got like 6 combat deployments, so we got a lot of baggage in there.
You've gotten that opportunity to kind of get it out.
Yeah, I have, and to think about it and have the guys weigh in, and sometimes they're mad at me for the stuff I did, and I get it. I made the wrong call, but I make the call with the best amount of information I have. And sometimes it's not right.
Yep.
It's part of being human.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting. So, in that kind of a scenario, I mean, where you're making these calls, what systems or rituals help teams stay calm or focused when everything around them is breaking down or going to shit?
Well, this is a cliche. You fall to the level of your training. You do. But the thing is, you're inoculated against a lot of the stress because you're used to stuff blowing up. I mean, before we go and I work on someone who's bleeding or a gunshot, I've done it on live tissue with animals, and you just get to work and you do what you're supposed to, and you kind of push that back. And I think that's why our guys struggle with a lot of PTSD, because what happens is, someone gets hit, we work on them, we don't have time. Then the next day we're back out the door working again, minus 1 or 2 people who are hurt. So you never get a chance to like stop and process it. Then you go home and your family needs you, and then you go to the funeral and their family is there. And so now it's like, okay, I would tell my guys, hey, this isn't our time to mourn. We're here for the family. We'll get our time after. And then afterwards, usually like Me and the boys will go meet by the grave, or we'll go meet in the bar after, and we'll have our moment, you know. But you can't keep kicking that can down the road. You have to have your moment at some point, and it's just about picking an appropriate time to do it. Because sometimes if there's people shooting at you, now's not the time to be worried about your buddy. You got to win the gunfight and then get back there and get them. Now, when we get back, we got another op. Hey, I need your head with me. We got to do this again tomorrow. Then you get home, your family needs you. You got to do that. Now their family needs you. Don't make it about you, but you got to get there sometime. And as a leader, you need to make sure your people get their moment.
Do you believe leaders are born for that kind of pressure, or can that composure be developed through experience and culture?
Absolutely forged through experience and culture. Absolutely. You can build it. And one of the best things you can do, I talk about those mentors, is, if that guy's the kind of guy or gal you want to be, then you know what? Get used to them. Get some of that good juice, some of that aura that they got, and let it soak in. Because I've heard it said you're the product of the 5 people you hang out with most. Make sure those are good people. Make sure they're the kind of people that are going to push you and get you where you want to be the kind of man you want to be.
I think a lot of leaders today face the same pressure, right? They've got too much data, not enough clarity. So they freeze when they're trying to make a decision or whatever. You seem to have learned how to move with incomplete information. What's the key?
Well, I think this lends itself to, so I'm good friends with Jocko, and I'm not going to give him credit for a lot of who I am. He was one of my mentors in the teams, but prioritize and execute is one of the things I do on a daily basis. So it's like I put my list down. It's in my phone now, not on a piece of paper. But, I look at it, I put numbers next to it, and I do it in that order. Because you have to understand what's pressing and what things you have to get done. And it's in the moment, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm going to do that thing. It's right there. But that thing that's right there is not what you need to get done. It's like if you're looking at a patient and they've got literally, they've shown that this animal laying there. It's got entrails laying out, and it's got the whole snout blown off, and there's a little cut on the wrist going. Psst, psst. You know what? You got to go fix that cut, because that's what's going to kill him. The entrails look scary, the face looks scary, but that blood, you got to stop that. That's the most important thing. That little squirty blood. Then you go over and you get the airway. Then, if you have time, you tuck those entrails in and tape it up. So prioritize and execute. It helps you to do what you need to do. And there's lots of systems out there that do it. Beyond the Brotherhood runs on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. Our implementer, Ned Tomasovic, donated his time to us, and it's been awesome. What they use is like, hey, if you got to put sand, rocks, and water in a jar, what do you put in first? The big things. And then you put in the sand, and then the water fills in the cracks. If you do it the other way, it doesn't work. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about how Beyond the Brotherhood gives SEALs a new mission, a reason to apply their discipline and training in new ways. In business, AI and automation are reshaping roles at every level. What is the role of purpose in all of this?
Well, purpose gives you a deeper meaning behind we have to have a baseline income. We have to have, food, water, the basics. But a purpose is a powerful thing, because if you're earning money just for the sake of earning money, just to have that number in your bank account, you're probably not going to be a very good person. That's just me. I don't have anything to base that on, but you're probably not. When you have a goal in mind, for me, I want financial security. I want to send something to help these high quality men not kill themselves and get their way out. And you know what? People see that purpose in what I do. And it's not about money for me. There's lots of times I'll do jobs for people, and I'll just say, I say yes before I even quote a price. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it, because there's something in there that matters to me. So that purpose is really important. If your purpose is just money, I don't think you're going to have a very happy life, in my opinion.
Well, today with all the AI and automation that's taking place, there's a big fear for a lot of employees that they're going to lose their job. It's going to negatively impact them. And that's a fair concern, right?
It's absolutely true. There are.
Yeah.
But they had the same thing when they brought out like the steam shovel. They're like, oh, now we don't have people with shovels. We're not going to have any jobs. Well, guess what? We just got more productive. Oh, the assembly line. Oh, we're not going to have. There'll be new ways. There'll be new things. Our next set of millionaires might be HVAC techs and electricians and plumbers.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
as leaders are kind of leading through this, how can a leader keep a sense of mission alive as they integrate automation and AI in their organizations?
Yeah, I think so. Number one, as a leader, you need to identify who your best people are, and you need to keep them no matter what. Even if you're not sure what to do with them. I'm a people first person. You need to make sure you keep them. And then, as far as we stay on a mission, I've said it like 10 times, the mission statement. If you start to get a little lost, look back to that mission statement. Does this still make sense? Has our mission changed? If it has, you need to sit back down and go over the mission statement. But if it hasn't, your guiding lights right back on. That mission statement is a really important, powerful thing. And you can use it in lots of ways. You can use it for your family. You can use it for your life. You can use it for your career. You can use it for your business. It's whenever you feel like you're a little bit lost, get your mission statement tight in whatever aspect of life you're working.
Great advice. You've built a nonprofit and a for-profit business, Beyond the Brotherhood and Mayday Executive Services. How do you balance purpose and performance?
Oh, is that a balance? I don't know that that's a balance. Purpose and performance, they're not mutually exclusive in any way. I mean, your purpose is why you do things. Performance is how you do those things. So your purpose is just going to prioritize what things you do. And then when you perform them, I asked my son this morning, because this morning he didn't do a good job making his bed. I'm like, hey, man, what are the two ways we do things around here? He goes, right or again. I'm like, that's right. That bed don't look good. So I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I don't think that's a balance. I think that's just two separate branches. So sorry if I thwarted your question.
No, no problem, man. I like that perspective. When you look at technology today, from AI to robotics, and we've talked a little bit about this already, but what excites you and what concerns you about its impact on people?
Well, I think that, I mean, honestly, I don't want to be a fear monger, but there's a lot of things out there that can happen really fast. And the biggest thing I'm worried about is the continual weakening of the human race. Like right now, I told my son today, I was like, hey, he's 11. I was like, within your lifetime, you will probably not be allowed to drive anymore. Like automation is going to be deemed too safe. So even if you're a good driver, they're going to take that away from you. And now you want to talk about control. You can't go anywhere unless the government knows it. And I think another really cool opportunity coming up is what we're going to do, like the bioengineering. We can eradicate the genetic predisposition to a lot of the genes that are out, to a lot of the maladies that, we could have kids that grow resistant to malaria. They're already born with, we don't need to vaccinate them. They're born with resistance to all these things. I think those kind of things are on the horizon. But now, who controls that? What kind of legislation? We could have these kids born wanting to want something that is not healthy for a significant portion of the population. We could essentially take choice away before it even manifests itself. And I think that there's something really scary about that, because we see what happens when man just like, when man, like in Iraq, for example, when I saw like what Saddam did to that land, it was beautiful and insane. But like he'd be like, I want a lake here. They're like, there's no way to get a lake here. He's like, make it happen. And so he would like change this, the people would get together and change the engineering and make these crazy structures and lakes and palaces. And then as soon as, but the little bit of upkeep goes away, the whole thing just like reverts back to nature, because nature is the perfect force, God created it. It's going to just keep working. So I think there's going to be a lot of really scary things, cool things like, oh, we're going to eradicate diseases, but there's going to be a lot of these unforeseen consequences that we don't even understand to ask those questions yet, and they're going to pop up. And I don't know. I mean, it's an exciting time. It's going to cause a lot of pain, but it's also going to cause a lot of opportunity for those people that are ready to embrace it and harness it and not do things the way they've always been done.
Yeah, I think things are going to look a lot different 5 to 10 years from now.
Yeah. I know.
Well, we've talked a lot about mission and, mission-driven leadership, but in your view, what's the difference between being data-driven and being mission-driven in leadership?
Well, I think data-driven is for someone down in your organization. Like I like to have that guy a little farther down. So maybe he's my my CTO, my chief technical officer or something. But I think running an organization, it needs to be mission driven. You need to be able to like combine all those things that don't necessarily make sense. There's a book called Range, and it basically talks about how learning a lot of little things, being essentially an inch deep and a mile wide, and it's the exact opposite of what Josh Waitzkin wrote in his book. They did a movie about him, Finding Bobby Fischer, but he wrote The Art of Learning. He's like, depth is better than breadth. Go deep. But I think that data-driven guy, that's the person that goes deep in that data and understands what needs to go on. The top guy needs to be well-versed in a whole lot of things in order to like build that vision, but he needs to respect and have a data guy on the side that can help inform his breadth of knowledge. I think that's how those two work together.
We've talked about the concern that people have now with AI and automation coming in. What advice would you give leaders who are trying to keep that humanity and empathy at the center of the digital transformation that's taking place?
Yeah, I don't think you can fight it. I think AI is coming whether you want it or not. It's coming. And so the best thing that you can do, and I'm a people first person, I always am. My executive director at Beyond the Brotherhood, he's a process person. We work together phenomenal. He builds, I have these ideas and I put the right people in. But I think that we need to always keep your people at the center of what your decisions are. And you know what? Sometimes you have to, does that mean you never lay anybody off? No, you have to, because otherwise, if you can't compete because you got too much payroll, then your whole business goes and you can't help anybody. So basically, that misplaced loyalty means you're trying to be loyal to everyone, and all of a sudden you screw everybody over, or trying to be loyal to one or two, and you're screwing over the whole rest of the group. So I think that you know you need to be loyal to your people, but you need to make sure if the mission matters that it's still at the center of it. And sometimes some of those people will have to go away. They have to find another job. If they're really high quality, I'll keep them on the payroll and just figure out how to keep them in my organization, whatever that is. But you're going to have to cut jobs. Some layoffs are part of it. And if you don't do that to keep up with times, then people like you are not going to be running things very long. It's just the way.
You mentioned earlier, you were talking about the night vision and the transition of the teams transitioning to that new technology. If you were designing an AI system for a mission critical team today, what human principles would you bake into it from day one?
Wow. Okay, I don't have to tell you how to do it. I can just tell you what I would like to see in it.
Right.
Okay, because I don't know how to do it. I think I think that I'd like to bake in empathy. It's different than sympathy. Sympathy is like, that sucks. Empathy is like, that sucks and I'm here with you. And so if we could somehow figure out how to bake in that very human aspect of empathy, I think that would be a powerful thing. But I don't know how to do it. I don't even know how to do it with people all the time.
Yep. I agree. I struggle with that myself. Jimmy, as we wrap up, I'd love for our listeners, many of whom are CIOs or CISOs, just business leaders out there, to walk away with something they can apply tomorrow. So, what's one principle from your SEAL experience that every leader should apply to their organization today?
That construct I mentioned earlier, mission, team, self, is a great construct. I do it all the time. And, understanding that mission deeply and then making sure you put the team first before yourself and having your whole organization do that is a recipe for success. It straight up is.
How do you personally define resilience and how do you build it into a team culture?
Resilience is the ability to overcome obstacles in accomplishing a task. And there's lots of different ways to do it. When I teach it, I teach community purpose and goals. But more importantly, this resilience is something that you can build in your team through shared intense experiences, which builds trust, which builds resilience.
One of my mentors when I was at Wachovia Bank years ago was big on high performing teams. We spent a lot of time training and teaching on high performing teams. And I think if you can actually build that within an organization, you've done a great job. That being said, what's a misconception about high performing teams that you wish business that go up?
That everybody agrees and everybody likes it. Like I found that, you know, we had this op go down once and I thought it was the best op ever. It was awesome. We had these guys trying to cross this river and we already killed like 19 dudes and it was just a great mission. These guys were trying to get across this river and I was like, hey, get those helicopters out of here. And because the helicopters were coming in and we had 3 different positions and we were all under fire. But I wanted those bad guys to really get all of them, because when they get out of those boats, they're stuck in the mud. Then we bring back in, there's these 2 chicks that were flying these helicopters. We call them the Angels of Death. And they came in there and once those guys got across the river, they had weapons and everything. Those girls came and gunned them down. And I thought it was just going to be a great like love fest. One of the guys in there was really upset with me. And he's like, hey man, there was a lot of gunfire coming our way. You're calling these helicopters off. What's that about? So it turned out to be great. None of us got hurt. I explained my piece, but he wasn't happy with it. And guess what? Those other people in that room that weren't happy with it either. He's just the guy that had the testicular fortitude to get up and say something to me. That misconception is that everyone's going to like a high performing team because that was a very high performing platoon. they were pretty unhappy with that decision that I made, even though it worked out great, right? And I'm grateful to that kid, young man, for getting up and saying something, because I know a lot of other people had to say it. And I'm grateful for the culture that I'm on my sixth deployment and this guy in his first would get up and say something to me, to my face. So
But he
I was pretty
felt safe
impressed.
enough to be able to get up and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he did. It was impressive,
If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what leadership lesson would you reinforce?
Oh my gosh. I was completely lost for a time in my life, just completely lost. And I think that I didn't get on the mentorship train till later on in my career. I think I would have been, if I saw Jimmy May walking across the quarter deck of SEAL Team 2 in 2002, I'd be like, hey, you go find yourself a man of character to be a mentor, and you sit down and you make it official and you have this person help you. My grandpa died when I was in college. My dad died when I was in college. And I was not really, I was pretty hard headed. I didn't listen to anybody and I made a lot of mistakes that could have been easily avoided had I some kind of mentor that I respected.
I think being in the military and then civilian life, you measure success differently, obviously. So how do you measure success now? What does winning look like when you're outside the military now?
Well, for me, my biggest mission in life right now is to be a good man to my girl Kat and to be a good father to my son Riker. So my first two kids, one's 27, she's finished medical school, she's awesome. The other one is 21, he's finishing up, he's a junior and he's going to go to vet school. They're both highly accomplished, but I was never around for them. It's gone 300 days a year. They didn't even know me. I've got the second chance with my 11-year-old. I just really want to be a good dad for him and a good man to Kat. So those are kind of my biggest missions. Those matter to me more than anything else.
That's awesome. If you could give one piece of advice to someone leading through massive change today, whether it's digital, organizational, or personal, what would it be?
Don't be afraid. Risk is opportunity. Sit down, figure out where to go, and make it to the best people on your team to take you there and get moving.
Great. Jimmy, your story reminds us that transformation is as much about people and purpose as it is about tools and technology. Thank you for your service and for what you're doing to help others find theirs.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me, Carl. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. This has been Edge of Intelligence. My guest today was Jimmy May, retired SEAL commander and founder of Beyond the Brotherhood, a mission-driven organization helping elite warriors transition into new chapters with purpose and clarity. Jimmy, for our listeners who want to learn more or even get involved, where should they go?
Let's go to beyondthebrotherhood.org. So that's where we screen and select Navy SEALs of character for the next mission. I tell you what, I'm super proud of this organization. I make $36,000 a year as the CEO and the chairman of the board, and I plan on resigning my full salary very soon because Mayday is how I make my money. But we squeeze the most out of every single dollar we have. And you can get involved. If you want to be a donor, we need it. If you want to be a mentor to one of these guys, that'd be great. If you want to hire one of our guys, but it all starts at beyondthebrotherhood.org. So please go there, take a visit, and let's get involved.
And for our listeners, if you found value in today's conversation, please share this episode and subscribe. I'm Carl Owen, and I'll see you next time on Edge of Intelligence. Thank you, Jimmy.
All right. Thanks, Carl.